working, so please just be
It
prepared
is.
to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Meeting
Oh, it says yeah.
live on YouTube. Great.
Right, there we go. We are super duper professional here at Grid Talk. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Grid Talk. My name is Tom Downey. Apologies for the technical delay, as Zoom was about as reliable as an Alpine power unit. Today, we're going to discuss the 2024 Qatar Grand Prix. Joining me, we have Jonah Hill, who is the two-time esports F1 world champion.
Hello.
Hello, he made me say that. We also have Kristen Hovarth, who is one of the esteemed writers for F1 Chronicle.
Hello.
Good evening. And we also have none other than the Grid Talk regular host and panelist and just general nerd, Owen Medford.
Hello. That sounds so
Hello,
much worse compared to everyone
hello,
else.
sir. Yeah, not quite kill them with kindness, hey. Just before we get into this episode, we must thank our sponsor, Bet Online. So this Thanksgiving holiday, why not head over to the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting, Bet Online. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, Bet Online provides you with constant real-time odds and action and the ability to watch games as they happen. Head to the website today to see why Bet Online is America's most trusted site for online wagering. Bet Online, the game starts here. Please be sure to follow us on social media at GridTalk UK. And if you're feeling extra generous, please do consider supporting us on Patreon for exclusive access behind the scenes content. So, with all that being said, and now that the intros are out of the way, Jonah, I'm going to come to you first, good sir. So, this is another Max Verstappen win with his teammate DNFing. So, normal service is resumed.
Yeah, I mean, normal service is definitely resumed. It's interesting though. Max Verstappen is just a man possessed. I think that even when all weekend he doesn't look like he has the best car, it doesn't matter. The guy's insane. There's no other way to describe it than the guy is just insane. He drove great today, and surprisingly, to me, the most surprising part is he drove clean. So good on him for getting a win and keeping it clean and keeping it all nice and tidy. But Checo, I just can't wrap my head around it. Like, is it the Red Bull curse that anyone who gets in that second seat just goes from being really good to really garbage? Or I don't know. To me, it doesn't make any sense. The most surprising part of the weekend for me was that he made it into Q3. Good on him for that, but then it was another DNF. He officially today cost Red Bull the Constructors Championship, or a shot at it at least, as they're now technically completely out of the picture. And I personally, I cannot see them keeping him. It doesn't make any sense to me that they would keep him for next year with this. But with that being said, good on Max. Great drive, really commanded it out there. Several safety car restarts. One, he got a little squirrely on the back end, which I like to see, but good on him. It's Max Verstappen. There's no words to describe it other than he's Max Verstappen. He's one of the best to ever do it, and we're watching history every day. He gets another win.
Absolutely. It was once again, it was a sort of fairly dominant drive from him in the car, which isn't the quickest anymore, or certainly doesn't appear to be the quickest anymore. But Kristen, we'll come to you next. And I jokingly said about the Alpine sort of power unit issues. But Gasly, he finished P5 in that Alpine to strengthen that grip on fifth in the constructors for Alpine. But on the other side of the garage, it is sayonara, or should we say au revoir to Esteban Ocon, as it has been confirmed since the race ended that that was his last race for Alpine, as he is going to be doing the postseason test for Haas. And Flavio Briatore said, well, if you do that, you're not racing in Abu Dhabi. So, two points there for you. First one, obviously, Gasly's brilliant P5 today. Then also Ocon is finished with Alpine.
Yeah, it is unfortunate to see Ocon out this way, in one sense, especially since, he is a big part of the reason why they are where they are in the Constructors' Championship, with his second place finish a couple races ago. And Pierre, what a great showing today after he didn't do so well in his qualifying. And he is really thrilled and happy, with how the car is finally performing, our last few races, and we're getting Alpine, to give us finally something this season. And, not just something, but, with the big podium finishes that they did have, like I mentioned, just to put them up in the Constructors' Championship with these points is huge for them, and they need this. But now, as for our last race of the season, it looks like Jack Doohan is going to replace Ocon. And Ocon wanted to go and do his testing for Haas, like you mentioned. And unfortunately, they said, no, you can't. And he said, well, I'm going to. And so good for Jack Doohan, to get an early jump on his rookie career, and get behind the car yet again this season. So gonna wish him the best of luck for the next race, and wish Ocon the best of luck with his new team next season.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what Ocon can do in that Haas, and whether he can crush Ollie Behrman's soul as Ocon seems to do with all of his teammates in F1. Just ask, well, everybody who he's raced against. But Owen, Ferrari, at a circuit where they didn't really think they'd have the sort of pace or sort of have the performance that they did, actually turned out to be quite a good result for them, especially in this battle with McLaren for the Constructors' Championship. So Charles ultimately finished second, and Sainz, even after having that puncture, finished sixth on the road. It's going down to the wire in Abu Dhabi for Ferrari and McLaren. Do you think that Ferrari, bearing in mind everything with McLaren, which we'll get into in a moment, do you think Ferrari could clinch the constructors? Do you think we saw enough from them today to show that they have that pace in the car?
I'd like to think so. I think obviously they've made some strides into McLaren's lead in the constructors. I mean, obviously I think they were benefited a little bit by actually, well, not so much benefited by basically Norris obviously getting having a really poor, like an awful sort of last third of the race when it came to the decisions of the stewards and things like that. But you have to think that it could have been even better, because they got hit by bad luck themselves with Sainz obviously picking up that puncture and dropping him significantly down the order. So he was running actually much higher up. He sort of he was helped by the safety car to bring him back into contention a little bit, but otherwise it was looking like it was going to be a lot closer. I think in some ways, because of all of that, it's sort of it had quite a jumble of circumstances that have come together to mean that it's still 21 points that that McLaren leads Ferrari by in the constructor. So going into Abu Dhabi, they obviously have to outscore them by 22, which is it's no mean feat, particularly with a McLaren that I think should suit Abu Dhabi fairly well. And as much as they've had some bad luck with this race, not being able to sort of seal the deal, there was a point where they were actually going to outscore Ferrari by a significant amount and make it very, very difficult, if not impossible. But I think, as much as the gap has closed, I think McLaren probably just have enough of a lead to make it not mathematically impossible, but practically impossible for Ferrari, unless they have an absolutely astounding race and McLaren have a stinker. And I think Ferrari will be quite honestly okay with that. I mean, there are other benefits to coming slightly lower down, and Ferrari's not exactly hunting for cash. So as much as there's an outside chance of it, I don't think they'll get it, and I don't think Ferrari are going to care that much about it, to be honest with you.
No, absolutely. I think that's a very good point, to be honest, mate. It's everybody ultimately really wants the drivers' championship, and the constructors is a bit of an afterthought. I mean, it is the one that signs the checks, but also dictates how much wind tunnel time you have. And with Ferrari basically being a Kardashian of F1, where they get paid to exist by the FIA, I don't think they're going to worry too much about finishing first or second. But yeah, this I agree with you. I think the constructors is a formality by this point, because McLaren's they still picked up points today. Even if Lando did have a bit of an off day, Jonah. So we saw he got a 10-second stop-go penalty for not slowing under yellow flags or under double wave yellows. Uh, there is a bit of a wider topic here, which is around the penalties from today in general. So Hamilton obviously got a drive-through penalty for speeding in the pit lane and got a 5-second penalty for a jump start. And George got a 5-second penalty at the end of the race. I'll be honest, I can't even remember what for. It didn't affect anybody's finishing position ultimately. So as a McLaren fan, with Lando sort of getting that 10-second stop go, still salvaging a point, and then Oscar finishing third, you must be having some mixed emotions this afternoon.
Yeah, mixed emotions are an understatement. Quickly to bounce off of Owen's point, I think that the McLaren will suit Abu Dhabi decently well now that Abu Dhabi has removed a good chunk of the slow speed corners. I've seen that's been McLaren's weakness at some of the tracks, and now that they got rid of specifically the chicane, that's what I think is turn like 4 or 5. They got rid of that, so I think Owen's pretty much hit the nail on the head. Um, but in terms of this, Kay, I'll try and say this from a non-biased McLaren fan. Does Lando deserve a penalty for speeding under double waved yellows? Yes. Does he deserve a penalty of this magnitude? In no way my brain does not compute in the same way that whoever was the stewards or the race director this weekend making that call. We haven't had a stop go penalty all season. This is the first one we've had all season. This is round 20, 22, 23, 23, I think. We haven't had a stop go penalty all year, and they give him one for speeding under yellow flags. Okay, give him 5 seconds, give him 10 seconds. Yeah, he should have lifted 100%. That's etiquette. But a stop go, you cost the guy 36 seconds or something like that in the pit lane, 30 seconds in the pit lane for speeding under it doesn't make sense to me. If we flash back a few, I'm so heated about this. If you flash back a few weeks to Mexico, right? Max Verstappen got less time in penalties trying to literally run Lando Norris into a wall and pushing off the track and disregarding track limits and disregarding racecraft. He got less time in penalties for that than Lando did for not lifting under a double wave yellow, which should have already been a safety car. But the FIA did not pull out, which makes, once again, no sense. But I digress on that point. It should not have been such a substantial penalty. My opinion, and this might be controversial or whatever you want to call it, my opinion is that the Drivers' Championship was hyped up and then wrapped up really quickly when Max had one hell of a race in Vegas. And Formula One and the FIA were like, well, we got to give people a reason to watch Abu Dhabi. So they penalized Lando way harder than he should have to bring Ferrari just that little bit closer to make an Abu Dhabi championship battle that much more realistic. Although Owen's point is very, very strong in saying that McLaren's lead might be a little bit too far, especially with the characteristics of the Yas Marina circuit, probably suiting the McLaren a little bit more than the Ferrari. There's no reason he should have gotten this significant of a penalty. And I truly think that this is the FIA searching for something to make Abu Dhabi interesting instead of wrapping up both championships before the last race. That's my view on it. Way too harsh of a penalty. Unbelievable. Hamilton as well. So enough about the McLarens because everybody's sick of hearing me talk about McLaren. The Hamilton's penalty, I also think is too harsh. Why does he need a drive-through penalty? Speeding in the pit lane should be 5-10 seconds at most. There's no reason you have to bring him back in, let him drive through the pits. He can't stop. He can't box, can't change tires, can't do anything. He's got to drive through for no good reason. Yeah, he spit in the pit lane. Maybe if he forgot to hit his pit limiter on his wheel, okay, fine. 5 seconds, 10 seconds at most. And that was an incident that affected Lando because he had to brake and lock both his fronts. It's still too harsh of a penalty. George's penalty, like you said, I don't even know what it's for. I feel like it feels like one of the Oprah Winfrey shows when she's just handing stuff out and it's like, you get a penalty, you get a penalty, you get a penalty. Like, it makes no sense. You can give out penalties, but the magnitude of the penalties they were handing out today just doesn't add up in my head. And I feel truly like the FIA and the stewards conflicted too much in this race that took away from the on-track action. Like, Lando was not necessarily going to catch Max. I don't know if that was going to happen, but he was only 1.6, 1.7 seconds behind him. If he puts his foot down and Max is managing his tires, it's possible. But you're going to give the guy 30 seconds and ruin that completely and let Max walk away and then boom, safety car. Like, I don't know. It makes no sense. I don't understand it. I think, yes, he should have gotten a penalty to conclude. Yes, he should have gotten a penalty. What they gave him was way too much. Way too much.
Absolutely. It's one of those where, like you said, it did deserve a penalty. Was that the right penalty? Who knows? I don't think so. I was very, very surprised when I saw it come up as a stop go, because we were chatting before we started, and I said, when was the last time we even had a stop go penalty? Because they're so rare. And I remember thinking a few weeks ago when I was watching, I think back in 2017 highlights, when Vettel got a stop go, then I thought to myself, when was the last time we had a stop go penalty? And I would have to go and have a look, because I genuinely cannot remember. Well, obviously, aside from today. But yeah, so it was mixed fortunes for McLaren and to a point Mercedes. But Kristen, we have to talk about the elephant in the room, and for once, it's a good elephant in the room. I am genuinely happy about this. Sauber scored points plural. And just before we go on, I do want to say Sophia, who's our Formula Talk co-host with myself when we actually sort our schedules out. That, and she's also one of the hosts here at Grid Talk. She predicted Sauber to get points. So Soph, there's your shout out, mate. I did say I would do it. But Christian, Zhou Guan Yu came home to score multiple points for Sauber.
He sure did. He finished P8 today, and which now all 10 teams have now scored points in the constructor standing, which is great. That doesn't always happen. So completely happy for him, since this is his, last 2 races in F1 for who knows, could be forever, or, he could have a comeback. And like he said, I saw in his interview, it's the last race that people remember. And so this is such an incredible way for him to finish. Now, gentlemen, I'm going to have you put your tinfoil hats on for a second, because do we think that they did finish, thank you, in the points? Because Bottas ran over that mirror that was in the middle of the, line. And then we had the virtual safety car, and a little conspiracy theory, potentially he knew what he was doing by running that over to get his teammate up there in the points, and he himself was so close to getting points as well today. So there was a potential for double points, but that didn't happen. But nonetheless, conspiracy theory or not, congratulations to Zhou Guan Yu for getting those points. And you could just see how happy he was, and he absolutely deserved those points. They've had just a tough go of it, unfortunately, this season. And they brought upgrades. I think they were the only team that brought the upgrade to the track, and it paid off for them this race. So congratulations to them.
Absolutely. And after the whole season that they've had, that team with the issues with pit stops at the start of the season, where I think the wheel nuts were overheating and they were they're having to sit for a minute in their pit boxes, and then just always being slow, and the butt of the joke for everything. I am so happy to see Joe score points, because he seems like a likable guy. Unfortunately, he's not the quickest, but yeah, I'm just so relieved to see him get a good result. And at one point, it did look like we were going to have double points with Bottas, but alas, it was not to be for him. But at least Bottas is no longer 23rd in the 20 driver championship. He's he is just the goat. But Owain, well, what was I going to say? Oscar Piastri, yes, he is at the moment. He is P3. That is pending a investigation, I believe, as he was summoned to the stewards for crossing the pit lane on one of the reconnaissance laps, which I still maintain was absolutely fine, because it's a broken white line. It's not a solid white line. But as something with that comes about, we will see. At the moment, I just checked. At the moment, there's nothing. So as it stands, Piastri P3. Like I said to Jonah earlier, bit of a tough day for McLaren, but the mixed fortunes. He still scored a good chunk of points in this constructors battle, and if he gets a penalty, I don't know if you saw it or not in the reconnaissance laps. Do you think it would be deserved, or do you think it's the FIA just licking their finger and seeing what sticks again?
I've not seen it at all. All I can say is if it's on reconnaissance laps and it's entry into the pit lane, I think some of it has to come down to how safe is it. Because let's be honest, it's not a competitive session at all, like in any way. There's no advantage to be gained or anything like that. And unless there's like clear and present danger that he's not avoided or caused potentially by causing this by infringing the rules in that way. I think it's the race director's event notes or whatever it'll be. Then I think it's probably fine. If not, he might get a penalty that takes him out of the points, and then the FIA would have a brilliant thing for Abu Dhabi, where McLaren would lose 15 points and there'd just be 6 points between the two, going into the final race. But after taking my tinfoil hat back off, no, I don't think he deserved it. Otherwise, I think it's a great, with him in P3, it's actually a great result for him. I mean, he's only overtaken Russell, and you could say that Russell and the Mercedes were actually a little bit hampered today. Both of them seem to have issues, but Piastri himself seemed to, even that you can't really look at the time at the end of the race, but he's only 6 or 7 seconds off Verstappen, and only slightly behind Leclerc. So there's a lot of chopping and changing in that as well. So he's had to defend his position and also get past Russell, who was slowing him up at that point. So it's a good race from him, and I think to lose points over what is laps to the grid, a slight infringement there, which obviously you shouldn't infringe any of the rules at any time, but it's in the same way. It's a bit like speeding in the pit lane during a competitive session is different to speeding in the pit lane during practice. That's penalised with a fine, not numbers of second. Not the regular sort of tranche of penalties that you can be given. So I think it's a good performance, and I don't think he should be penalised for it, because I can't imagine it being that bad, having not seen it. Which I will qualify everything I say with that. I haven't seen it.
Yeah, apologies. That I gave you I gave you a topic and it's like, oh, I haven't seen it. I should have checked with you to see if you had seen it. But no, it was basically Hamilton was trundling into the pit lane, which, to be fair, given his pace in that Mercedes, was probably full speed for him. Oscar just moved in front of him, Tokyo Drift style, and went over the broken white lines of the pit lane. That's important to distinguish, actually. They were broken white lines as opposed to a solid white line, which, much like the UK rules of the road, you can't cross a solid white line unless you drive an Audi like me, and just push your way in. Yeah, apologies for that Fiesta I bumped in front of in Reading yesterday. But yeah, so I mean, for Oscar, aside from that sort of penalty, potential penalty incoming, it certainly was a bit of a 5-star drive from him. And segue, if you like this podcast, we would love it if you could take 5 to leave us a 5-star rating on where we Spotify, or 5-star review on Apple Podcast, or whichever way around it is. Yes, and also if you're not subscribed, please do consider subscribing on YouTube. It does help us out a lot. I know it's the whole YouTube, oh, please subscribe, but it genuinely does help our metrics. So thank you for that. Right. Those are the initial talking points that I had. I mean, there are only so many times we can sort of bang the drum about the same topic. But I want to finish off with one final sort of topic and this is for everyone, and it's something that's been highlighted this weekend. It started really with the qualifying penalty for Max Verstappen, where he got a one-place grid penalty, which I can't remember the last time we saw a one-place grid penalty. And there's obviously, he was on a slow lap, George was on a slow lap, George cried on the radio and got a penalty. Then coming into the race, we obviously had the Lando stop-go penalty, the Hamilton drive-through penalty. Jonah, I'll go to you. We'll go through an order again. But Jonah, I want to come to you. Just give me your sort of initial thoughts, and please keep it clean, on the FIA sort of penalty inconsistencies at the minute, and also the sort of lack of action that we had around safety cars. Because let's be fair, that mirror that flew off Albon's car was on the circuit for way too long, and it did cause an issue.
Yeah, 100%. And I will keep it clean. Don't worry about it. So here's my thoughts on it. When you look at other reputable sports, Okay, let's look at, for example, I'm going to sound super North American here, but let's look at the hockey, the NHL, the MLB, the NBA, the NFL. You have specific penalty, like specific punishments per penalty. In hockey, if you trip somebody, it's 2 minutes. If you I don't know. Let's go with tripping. Or if you slash somebody, it's 2 minutes. You always know it's going to be 2 minutes. The only time there's an exception is if you high stick somebody, it's 2 minutes. And if there's blood, it's 4 minutes. Pretty straightforward. It's very set in stone and you know what's going to happen. My problem with Formula One at the moment is that it's never consistent and it's never set in stone. It's always different. Now, in my opinion, there's a pretty easy way to solve that. There is, in my head, for a sport that brings in so much money, there is no reason that it shouldn't be full-time jobs for the stewards to be the same people for every race. It should be a traveling group of 5, 6, 7, 8, however many stewards they want that are the same stewards for every Grand Prix. It should not be different based on the race, because to my knowledge, that's the way it is right now. I don't think they're the same stewards. It should be the same stewards for every race to keep it consistent, because you have the same people coming up with the same penalties. You don't see in hockey one guy get tripped and get 2 minutes and the next guy get tripped and get 4. You don't see that happen. You might see it here and there with the suspensions, but it's not the case. The same thing with the MLB, same thing. Well, they don't really get penalties. Same thing with the NFL and their flags. It's usually 5, 10, 15 yards. That's the way it is in most sports. And if you want to stay reputable and have a reputable championship that is consistent and fair, you can't have different people making different penalties at any given Grand Prix. To me, that doesn't make any sense. That's my stance on the penalty inconsistencies. Safety car, no reason it shouldn't have come out. There's no good reason that it shouldn't have been there. There is debris on the track. Yes, it's not directly on the racing line, but you have a wing mirror. You have a full mirror on the racetrack. And yes, it's not on the racing line, but if somebody pulls out of the slipstream, that's exactly where it's sitting. So the fact that if you're not going to send a marshal running onto the racetrack to go get it, which they shouldn't, why are you not getting out a safety car to let them go get that, bring the safety car through the pits, let somebody go get that and go pick it up? It's 1-2 laps at most, you resume racing. Sure, you clump up the field, maybe you make it a little bit more interesting, but you're going to risk the people driving over this, sending debris everywhere, which you don't know could hit somebody in the pit lane because it was on the pit wall pretty much. You have no idea where that's going to go. You cause 2 punctures to 2 quote unquote front running teams, if you want to count Mercedes as a front running team. Lewis Hamilton and Carlos Sainz both destroyed their front lefts over that thing. You have Valtteri running over it. There's no reason it should have been a safety car. It just makes no sense. I equate it back to Abu Dhabi 2021, which I know is everybody's favorite talking point. I mean, like you're gonna bring one out for something like that. Yeah, makes sense. You had 2 guys. You had Latifi crash into the wall, debris on the track. There's debris on the track here. Why are you not bringing out a safety car? It makes no sense. Yeah, you want to stop the race? It's a safety thing. You're going to give Lando 10-second stop go for a safety. Why are you not bringing out the safety car for something like this? It doesn't make any sense in my head, and it's completely inconsistent and completely wrong, and it ruins a lot of the reputation of certain races because it allows the governing body to get in the way and affect the results, and I don't like that.
Absolutely. You said it yourself. It's a safety thing. It's called the safety car. It's not called the inconvenience car. It's called the safety car. Kristin, do you have anything to add to this? What's your sort of view on the whole penalty inconsistencies and the safety car?
I agree with Jonah, on everything he's saying. Over the years, for so many years, I've been saying they're consistently inconsistent. It's unfortunate. They have precedents that has been set, yet they choose not to use it and they choose to make up things as they go. It is the only sport out there that you can make changes in the weekend of the races and the day of the races and say, this is how it's going to be moving forward. Now, I understand it when it's for safety precautions. Yet, like Jonah was saying, they didn't take their own safety precautions. They clearly have this thing, this mirror on the road. It shatters. You're going to get that material. You can see exactly what's going to happen. They don't send out a virtual safety car, so they're not following, what they're saying needs to happen themselves as well. So there is that consistent inconsistency. And I do agree, it started with Max's 1-place grid penalty. When was the last time we had a 1-place grid penalty? It is getting a bit ridiculous. And okay, let's go tinfoil hat again. I love this. Is it because You know, George started this account on Instagram, the GPDA, you know, the Grand Prix Drivers Association, where all the drivers have signed this letter, and it's out there, and it states they want more, they want different, they want safety, they need to be looked after better. Is this a retaliation because of this creation that has happened in the past 2 weeks? Who knows, you know? But we've had now, what are we on, our third race director in 4 years? That's a problem. And they also say, and I kind of agree, that you don't have the same stewards from race to race to race. Now, I understand it's a lot. 23, 24 races is a lot. However, something needs to happen where we can follow precedents and be more consistent, is all I ask for.
Yeah, we'd all like the FIA to be more consistent, but I think there's more chance of hell freezing over and Mohammed Ben Salem not sacking people than that actually happening. Owen, I'll come to you finally. What's your take on this? You know, with again the inconsistencies and the safety car thing.
I mean, it's honestly, it's kind of ridiculous for so many reasons. You may have noticed if you're watching the video version of this podcast that I've been looking slightly distracted, and that's because I've been pouring through every single instance of speeding in the pit lane that I can find, just to see where a drive-through penalty comes from. And the only other thing, it's based on magnitude, I believe, to a certain degree. So, for example, in any free practice session, any free practice session, or all the way up to qualifying, basically, you're fined €100 per kilometer per hour over the speed limit, up to a maximum of €1,000. So you can go up to 10 kilometers an hour over the speed limit, whatever it is. In qualifying and practice, but you will find a maximum of 1,000 with an additional penalty if the stewards believe it's for purely competitive reasons. And then in the races, the only other sort of speeding in the pit lane that I could find of this sort of magnitude was in Miami this year, also for Lewis Hamilton, which also resulted in a drive-through, and that was 10.7 kilometers an hour, not 10.7 kilometers an hour over the 18 km/h speed limit, rather than 12.5. And I know this is very wordy, but I think if you go by that, it is consistent. But on the other hand, it's a bit weird that you can also go 12.5 kilometers, so that you can go that much over in a practice session and only be fined €1,000, and then get a drive-through penalty that completely wrecks your race in a race session. So that feels that maybe needs to be looked at. But either way, it seems to be relatively consistent for a drive-through penalty to be given. But otherwise, it's been ridiculous. I mean, I was watching one of the onboards while we were still going at racing speed, and it was at Lando's. It was Lando's indiscretion, not indiscretion. It was when Lando wasn't lifting, which he should have been doing. But one thing I noticed is even on the T cam above, you're going at 180 miles an hour, and when they hit, or probably less. So even if you lift, you're still to half of your speed. You're probably hitting it at 100 miles an hour plus. That piece of debris that came off the car, and I'm so surprised that it wasn't picked up earlier. I mean, I was saying that it was ridiculous in the live chat that it was still there, because you can't see it at 100 miles an hour. You can't, a piece of debris that big, you'd struggle to miss when you're sitting significantly higher up at highway speed. So to have a piece of, what could be quite deadly and probably quite weighty carbon fiber sitting there on the track for lap after lap, with the race control seeming paralyzed in what to do, seems utterly ridiculous. And to bring in Kristen's point about how it might be difficult to bring in stewards, or the same set of stewards, for 25 races. I look at the FIA and say that you get, the figures I'm looking at, a base figure of about it says it's $650,000 per team, just to enter the championship each year, to maintain your your entry into the championship, and that increases per point by another sort of $7,000, $8,000. That's more than enough. There's more than enough. I don't care what it costs to put on a Formula One race, but with the backing of Liberty Media and the cost of this, this should be a solved problem at this point. There's so much money flowing around Formula One. I don't think you get the excuse that it's too difficult. We can't have a permanent set of people doing this. When clearly there is more than enough money to pay people to be going to these races and have a professional group of race stewards, because otherwise it's frankly ridiculous. I know that's different to the race control issue, but what I will say is, and I know I've been all over the place, is that all of the issues were formed from that mirror, and the FIA, and the race director's refusal to deal with it for 5 laps or whatever it was. It's frankly ridiculous. We're watching what is supposedly the pinnacle of motorsport, and we're not acting like it.
Yeah, no, I'll be honest. I agree with all of you there, and just my 2 cents on the matter. The FIA is an absolute clown show, and it needs to be stripped out. It's rotten to the core. We've seen it year after year after year with issues, and those issues were highlighted during the 2021 season. Things were apparently put in place to fix things. We saw one race director get sacked after Japan 2022 after they let a tractor on the grid at racing speed, which, if you know the history of Japan, you know why that was such a sensitive incident in itself. We've seen the other race director be given his marching orders. And we've got another one who can't even throw out a safety car for what is blatantly a safety issue. I don't care if it's not for the spectacle of the sport. It is a safety issue. And and you summed it up perfectly, Jonah, Christian, you've all summed it up perfectly. It is a projectile that is on the circuit. And just because it's not directly on the racing line, it's like one of you said, if you go just a bit off the racing line, that thing flies up. If that hits someone, that's curtains. And we can have all the safety in the world that we want, but if the FIA is not going to prioritize safety over everything, then something needs to be done. And Ben Salem, if you want to send me a 20 grand fine for having a go at you, bring it on, sunshine. I hope you take Klarna. So with that being said, I just want to wrap up the show. So sort of final thoughts. We're just going to run through who was everybody's driver of the day. So Jonah, who was your driver of the day today?
Well, thanks for coming to me first. I'm going to agree with the general public. I'm going to say Zhou Guanyu was 100% my driver of the day today. Good on him. Good on Sauber. I'm so happy for them. And the stewards are stupid.
Fair enough. Kristen, who's your driver of the day?
Same. I'm going with the public. Zhou Guanyu deserved it 100%. I'm so happy for him.
Absolutely. Finally, Owen, is it a clean sweep, or are you going to go against the grain?
You know me, Tom. I've never gone with the grain. I think it's genetic. No, I'm gonna go with. I'm gonna. You know what? I'm gonna snub whoever's trying to force a script of a Red Bull. Of a Ferrari and McLaren constructors championship battle, and instead look at the one that's far more interesting lower down the grid, and look at Alpine, Renault, and the Alpine, Renault, and the Hasses. Pierre Gasly single-handedly keeping that alive, putting Alpine into 6th place with a 5-point margin going into the final race of the season. That's what I care about. Is that not brilliant? that means so much for that team monetarily.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, and yeah, Gasly, as we said earlier, he's absolutely doing bits for Alpine at the moment. For me, I am going to say Zhou Guanyu, purely because of what it means to Sauber for them to finally get those points, for him to get multiple points. But yeah, special mention to Gasly because he's been on absolute smoke recently. Much like his Brazil drive, because Max did so well, it kind of went under the radar a bit. And again, today, he had a brilliant qualifying, and again, he's sort of gone under the radar a bit. So, yeah, my vote is Zhou Guanyu, but Pierre Gasly so close behind him for driver of the day. So, with all that sort of being said, and with everything sort of wrapping up, just going to give you all a quick chance to give yourselves a plug or promo or something. So, Jonah, we'll come to you again, sir. I mentioned you're a two-time esports world champion. Is there anything you want to give a plug to aside from your prize money?
Oh no, the prize money's nice. It's in the garage right now. But yeah, if you want to follow me on Twitch, you can find me at Jonah F1 on Twitch. And I just want to shout out Grid Talk for having me on whenever the race is in a reasonable time zone in my neck of the woods. So it's always a pleasure to be back here with you, gents and lovely ladies. Thank you guys so much. It's always an honor.
Thank you, sir. It's always good to have you on. Kristen, I mentioned you are a writer for F1 Chronicle. So is there anything in particular you want to give a shout out to, or just?
Nope. Just to you guys, and thank you for having me. As always, again, same with Jonah. When it's good for my time zone here in Nashville, I appreciate always being with you guys. So thank you.
Lovely. Well, always a pleasure to have you on. And Owain, finally, I mentioned you are a co-host at Grid Talk. Anything you want to give a plug to?
Yeah, our Grid Talk social channels. They're available on at Grid Talk UK on all of the social media platforms with the app. And I believe we even have a Blue Sky account. So come and find us on there. As Tom just looks just completely ridiculous. He looks regaled by the fact that we have a Blue Sky account. Yeah, it's that new one that's not Mastodon. No, come find us over there, and you can keep up to date with all of the developments in the show. And I don't know, probably someone actually no, possibly not, because we're racing in Qatar, and Qatar is terrible, as a country for its human rights. But if you want to keep up to date with the rest of the show, then sort of the goings on outside of our recordings, then please come and have a follow over there.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, no, I regaled because I don't even know what Blue Sky is. I feel very, very old. So
You do live in Wales.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we've barely discovered electricity and fire at the minute. Right. So just to wrap up, Grid Talk is available on YouTube, where most episodes are recorded live, as well as Amazon Fire, Spotify, Apple Music, Verbal, and Pocket Cast. Just search Formula One Grid Talk for our back catalogue of shows with previews and reactions to qualifying and race results. A big thank you to Jared Bradley, Bill Armstrong, and Holly Eagle for supporting us on Patreon. If you do want to support the show further, why not sign up to our Patreon for exclusive content? Please make sure you subscribe so you are the first to know when each new episode is released. We'll be back soon with plenty more fun content as the season finally comes to an end next week. And then we'll spend 3 months crying, waiting for the season to come back. Thank you very much for listening to the Grid Talk podcast, presented by Bet Online.